All right, so today we're diving into something that's, I think, going to spark some cozy feelings for a lot of our listeners.
Yeah.
We're talking about
A
casseroles,
casserole.
that baked dish that, for a lot of us, especially those who grew up in like the latter half of the 20th century,
Right.
it just screams comfort food and home.
Absolutely. And it's easy to, just get swept up in the nostalgia of it all.
Right.
But, our deep dive today is going to kind of take us beyond those warm, fuzzy feelings a little bit.
Yeah.
We're on a mission to really uncover, the history behind these dishes and explore how they are being reimagined.
Right.
And maybe even how you listening could be reimagining them at home today.
Exactly. So whether you have, vivid memories of your favorite childhood casserole,
Right.
or, you're just curious about this iconic part of our food history,
Mm-hmm.
we dug into the sources and we found some really fascinating insights, I think, for you.
Yeah.
So let's just get started at the very beginning. Have you ever stopped to think about where the word casserole even comes from?
It's interesting. The term casserole actually has its roots in French.
Oh, really?
It comes from the word casse, which simply means a small saucepan.
Huh.
So initially it referred more to the pot itself
Oh.
than the wonderful concoction that was being cooked inside.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, now that you say that, I can kind of see that.
Right.
Like it's this pot that you bake things in.
Exactly.
So when you think about it, like the idea of tossing a bunch of ingredients together in one dish and baking it,
Yeah.
like that seems like a pretty universal kind of cooking method,
Yeah.
like across different cultures, right?
You've hit on a key point there. While the name might be, French casserole-like dishes have popped up in kitchens all over the world throughout history.
Okay.
So you think about Italian lasagna with its comforting layers of pasta sauce and cheese.
Right.
You could definitely see that as, a cousin to the casserole.
Yeah, for sure.
Or consider Middle Eastern moussaka, that delicious eggplant dish often layered with ground meat and bechamel.
Hmm.
These are all essentially variations on a theme, a baked multi-ingredient dish served right from the cooking vessel.
Yeah, so it's a global concept, but with a French name that seems to have stuck with us.
Yeah, it's stuck.
So when did the casserole really become, I guess, like a staple in American kitchens?
Right.
When did it become something that, our listener would likely recognize from their family dinners or,
Yeah.
from their childhood?
When did it hit the mainstream?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, my guess would be somewhere in the middle of the last century.
You're spot on with that timing. The 1950s and 60s were the real heyday for casseroles in American cooking.
Okay.
And several things came together to fuel that popularity. The post-World War II economic boom meant more people had access to things like canned goods
Right.
and, those shiny new electric ovens.
Right. Everybody had to have one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Suddenly, putting together a convenient and affordable meal for your family became much simpler. Yeah.
And this wasn't just about ease, though. It also reflected a shift towards more standardized, almost efficient ways of home cooking,
Okay.
often influenced by the clever marketing of processed foods,
Right.
which is, crucial insight into why casseroles initially took off.
So it's like convenience meets the modern kitchen.
Exactly.
Yeah. So were there any specific people or companies that really spearheaded this casserole craze?
Yeah,
Like the ones that home cooks, like you and I would turn to for recipes and things?
absolutely. One name that really stands out is Betty Crocker.
Of course. Yeah.
Now, while Betty Crocker herself was actually a fictional character created by General Mills,
Yeah.
the Betty Crocker cookbooks became incredibly influential guides for home cooks.
Oh, yeah.
They provided reliable and easy-to-follow recipes,
Right.
and you can bet a good number of those featured casseroles.
Yeah.
These books were practically a fixture in kitchens across the country.
It's funny because, now we think of like food bloggers and influencers.
Right. But back then, it was like Betty Crocker was like the OG.
She was the original influencer, yeah.
Yeah. So who else played a significant role in shaping the casserole landscape that many of us might remember?
Another major player was the Campbell Soup Company.
Like,
Back in the 1950s, they really hit on something brilliant by promoting their condensed soups as the perfect base for all sorts of casserole recipes.
oh, yeah?
This wasn't just a convenient shortcut for the home cook.
Right.
It also led to the creation of some truly iconic dishes that are still around today.
Yeah. Like the green bean casserole.
Exactly.
I mean, that's going to be like the first thing that pops into a lot of people's minds
Yeah.
when they think about like classic American casserole.
Right.
Maybe you even have memories of it on your family's holiday table.
Oh, absolutely. The green bean casserole, often featuring Campbell's cream of mushroom soup,
Yes.
those crispy French fried onions and canned green beans became a holiday tradition for many,
Yeah.
and a prime example of that mid-century American casserole.
Yeah. Okay, so we've traced the historical roots there.
Hmm.
We've given you a bit of background on how these dishes became so popular. But what about today?
Yeah.
It feels like there's a renewed interest in casseroles,
Right.
but maybe with a bit more of a modern twist.
For sure.
What are your thoughts on that?
You're right. There's definitely a resurgence of interest.
Okay.
And it was evolving in some exciting ways.
Yeah,
While that comforting, nostalgic appeal is still strong,
right.
there's also a movement among chefs and home cooks alike
Okay.
to elevate and reimagine these classic dishes for today's palates.
So, they're not just like throwing things in a pan and, whatever.
Yeah.
They're really thinking about it.
There's intention behind it.
Yeah. Who is really leading this charge?
Mm-hmm.
Are there certain chefs or culinary figures that you see that are really like championing this modern casserole
Yeah.
and offering inspiration for those of us who are looking to kind of update our, repertoire a little bit?
Several prominent figures have played a role in this. Think about chefs like Ina Garten, who has long been an advocate for approachable yet elegant home cooking,
Right.
often featuring updated takes on those beloved comfort food classics.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't forget pioneers like Julia Child,
Oh, yeah, of course.
who even in her time encouraged a more thoughtful and ingredient-focused approach to dishes
Okay.
that might have been seen as simple or humble.
Yeah.
Their influence has really inspired a new generation of cooks to look at casseroles with fresh eyes
Mm.
and consider the potential for more exciting flavors and textures.
Okay, so it's not just about, perfectly recreating grandma's recipe exactly,
Yeah.
but taking the heart of it and kind of building on it with new ideas.
Exactly.
Now, before we dive into some specific ways that you can, modernize these dishes at home,
Okay.
were there any other kind of surprising or interesting facts about casseroles that you came across in your research?
A few really stood out.
Okay.
We've already touched on the French origin of the word and the significant impact of Campbell's condensed soups. But here's a fun one for you. The world's largest casserole was created in Poland in 2010.
Really?
It weighed a staggering 3,960 pounds.
Oh, my goodness.
Can you even picture the size of that baking dish?
No, I can't even imagine.
Well, it's enormous.
That's a lot of casserole.
It's a serious commitment to the casserole.
Wow. Okay. So let's get practical here for our listener.
Okay.
If you're thinking, I'd love to try and jazz up some of those old casserole recipes that I have,
Right.
what are some key tips that you would suggest to get started?
This is where it gets really interesting and where you can really have some fun in the kitchen.
Okay.
One of the easiest ways to elevate a casserole is by thinking about texture.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just a uniformly soft dish,
Right.
consider adding crunchy toppings.
Okay.
Panko breadcrumbs,
Mm-hmm.
toasted nuts, or even crushed potato chips can provide a fantastic textural contrast that will make each bite more interesting.
Oh, I like the sound of that added crunch.
Yeah.
What else can our listener try to kind of bring their casseroles into the 21st century?
Another significant upgrade comes from focusing on the ingredients themselves.
Oh, yeah?
If a recipe calls for canned or frozen vegetables, try swapping them out for fresh seasonal produce.
Right.
You'll be amazed at the difference in flavor and the nutritional value you'll gain.
Right.
It can really brighten up the whole dish.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Fresh ingredients just make everything better.
Right.
What about flavor profiles?
Yeah.
Are there ways that you can move beyond that kind of traditional creamy soup base that we talked about earlier?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to explore global flavors. Instead of relying solely on familiar herbs and spices, experiment with international options,
Okay.
like turmeric for warmth,
Mm-hmm.
za'atar for a Middle Eastern flair, or even lemongrass for a Southeast Asian twist.
Wow.
These additions can completely transform a classic casserole and introduce you to exciting new tastes.
Yeah.
For instance, adding a pinch of smoked paprika can give a previously bland casserole a rich, savory depth.
Wow. So it's like taking a familiar framework and giving it a whole new personality.
Exactly.
What about the main protein in the casserole?
Yeah.
Any suggestions there?
Definitely, protein variety can also add a modern touch and cater to different dietary preferences.
Oh,
Instead of just ground beef or chicken,
right.
Consider trying quinoa or lentils for a plant-based option, or
Hmm.
perhaps flaked salmon, or even shredded tofu for a healthier and more diverse meal.
Okay, great ideas. And that offers a lot more flexibility too.
Exactly.
And what about that cheesy goodness?
Oh, the cheese.
That's often like a hallmark of casseroles,
Right.
something that I think a lot of people look forward to.
Yeah.
Any thoughts there?
When it comes to cheese selection for your casseroles, don't feel limited to just one type.
Okay.
Experimenting with a mix of cheeses can add layers of flavor and complexity that you might not have considered before.
Mm-hmm.
Think about combining a sharp cheddar with a nutty Gruyere, or even a pungent blue cheese for a more interesting and sophisticated taste.
Okay.
Consider how different cheeses melt and contribute flavor.
Right.
A high-moisture cheese like mozzarella will melt beautifully,
Right.
while a harder cheese like Parmesan will add a sharper, more concentrated flavor.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
So those are some fantastic and relatively simple ways to update those traditional recipes. Now let's really push the envelope a bit.
Okay.
What about some truly outside-the-box casserole ideas?
All right, let's get creative.
Yeah, for our more adventurous listeners out there.
Instead of a large baking dish, consider using innovative molds for your next casserole creation.
Okay.
Muffin tins are perfect for creating single-serve casseroles, which are great for portion control
Right.
and can offer a more elegant presentation if you're having guests.
Yeah.
Individual ramekins also offer a similar benefit and can make a simple casserole feel much more special.
I love the idea of individual portions.
Yeah.
It definitely elevates the presentation.
Right.
Any other unexpected additions our listener might want to consider?
Think about incorporating fermented ingredients into your casseroles. Adding a bit of kimchi or sauerkraut might sound unusual,
Yeah, a little bit.
but it can provide a wonderful tangy depth of flavor
Okay.
and also introduce beneficial probiotics.
Okay.
It's a way to add both an interesting flavor profile and a potential nutritional boost to a familiar dish.
Kimchi in a casserole that's definitely thinking outside the box.
Yeah, get creative.
So as we've explored the history and this potential for reinvention,
Hmm.
what's the key takeaway that you'd want our listener to remember about nostalgic casseroles
Yeah.
as they think about, their next meal?
The most important thing to understand is that casseroles are so much more than just relics of the past.
Okay.
They represent a fantastic creative outlet,
Yeah.
a blank canvas where you can blend the comforting traditions of classic recipes with exciting modern flavors and techniques.
Absolutely. It's about taking those familiar dishes that evoke those warm memories
Right.
and giving them a fresh contemporary spin in your own kitchen.
Exactly. By reimagining these classics, you can continue to enjoy the convenience and heartiness of a casserole
Right.
while exploring a whole new world of tastes and culinary possibilities.
And really keep your meals exciting.
For sure.
Well, this has been a truly insightful deep dive into the world of nostalgic casseroles.
I agree.
Thank you for unpacking all of this with me
My pleasure.
and for giving our listeners so much to think about.
It's always fascinating to see how culinary traditions evolve
Yeah.
and how you can be a part of that evolution.
And to you, our listener, we hope this has inspired you to maybe dust off those old casserole recipes
Yeah.
and perhaps get a little adventurous in the kitchen.
For sure.
We really encourage you to experiment with the ideas we've discussed
Yes.
and create your own reimagined casserole masterpieces.
Have fun with it. See what new and exciting dishes you can create.
And on that note, here's a final thought for you to simmer on.
Okay.
Considering how culinary trends often reflect broader societal shifts,
Mm-hmm.
what might the next evolution of the casserole look like?
Hmm.
What new ingredients, techniques, or cultural influences
Yeah.
might shape the future of this beloved dish
Right.
for generations to come?
Interesting question.
Until next time, keep exploring those culinary possibilities.
Happy cooking, everybody.
Yeah.